Today, we're going to dig into a really powerful idea from a teacher named Mark. It completely reframes a pretty shocking ancient story, and it ends up asking some really tough questions about what connection and community mean for us today. Okay, let's just dive right in. So, I want to kick things off with a question that gets right to the heart of all this. Just imagine someone making a huge donation, a really generous gesture. You'd expect them to get a round of applause, right? A pat on the back? But what if instead the result was their sudden, totally unexplained death? Yeah, that's the mystery we're going to unpack. Now, the story that sparks this whole thing comes from the book of Acts, and Mark uses it to get at a much bigger point. It's a super unsettling story about a couple named Ananias and Sapphira. Okay, so here are the bizarre facts of the case. You've got this couple, Ananias and Sapphira. They sell some land, then they bring a bag of money to the leaders of the new community, which, it sounds like a great thing. But they claim it's all the money from the sale, when it's not. They'd actually kept a portion for themselves. So the leader, a guy named Peter, he confronts Ananias. And get this, he doesn't call him out for keeping the money, but for lying about it. And right there, on the spot, Ananias just drops dead. A few hours later, his wife shows up, she tells the exact same lie, and boom, she dies too. The punishment seems wildly, crazily out of proportion to the crime, doesn't it? So what's the deal? Why was this lie so fatal? Well, to figure out why the consequence was so extreme, we have to zoom way out. Mark explains that the real key here isn't about the money at all. It's about a massive misunderstanding of one of the biggest ideas in their entire world, the temple. Okay, so let's build this idea from the ground up because it's super important. In the ancient way of thinking that Mark lays out, you basically have two different realities. You've got heaven, that's God's space, and you've got earth, that's our space. Think of them as two separate circles. But the original plan, the ideal, was for these two spaces to not be separate. The goal was for them to overlap perfectly, a world where God's space and human space were basically one and the same. This is the picture we get from the story of the Garden of Eden. So after that perfect overlap was broken, this idea of a temple comes into play. And it wasn't just a building. As Mark defines it, a temple was this intentional thin place, a spot where heaven and earth could still meet up. And that makes it a sacred space. It's holy, which means it's set apart. It's something that you absolutely do not treat as common or ordinary. For hundreds of years, this idea had a physical address. At first, it was a portable tent called the tabernacle, and later, it was the gigantic stone temple in Jerusalem. These were the literal, physical, thin places where people would go to encounter the presence of God. And this is where we get to the central conflict. Because at the exact moment in history that Ananias and Sapphira were alive, a totally revolutionary shift was happening. There was a clash between two completely different ideas of what and where the temple actually was. They were standing right at a massive turning point, and they completely missed it. So here's the contrast, plain and simple. On one side, you have the established stone temple, a physical building, a system of rules and rituals, all in one central spot. But on the other side, this new movement was saying something absolutely radical. The temple isn't a place anymore, it's a people. The community itself, bound together by a shared life, that was the new thin place where God's presence was hanging out. And this wasn't just some vague, fuzzy idea, it had a very specific rhythm. Mark points out 4 key practices. They were devoted to the teachings, they had deep community and shared meals. The Greek word here is koinonia. They prayed together, and they practiced this incredible radical generosity. That pattern was the architecture of this new living temple. And get this tiny, brand new community was living out this new reality right on the front steps of the old one. I mean, they were meeting and teaching literally in the shadow of the massive, imposing stone temple. It was a direct visual clash of two completely different worlds. And that brings us to the big reveal. When Ananias and Sapphira lied, it wasn't a financial crime. It was a theological one. Their dishonesty, their pretense, it was an act of treating this new, living, holy temple, the community of people, as if it were just some common, ordinary social club where you could fake it till you make it. They desecrated a sacred space. So this is where Mark brings it all home and shows us why a 2,000-year-old story is still so incredibly relevant. He uses these two powerful analogies to talk about the temptation that we all face, the temptation to chase a counterfeit connection, both then and now.
His first analogy is, well, it's designed to be provocative. He says they wanted the porn version of church. Now, what he means by that is they wanted the appearance of intimacy. They wanted that false sense of connection and the false recognition that comes with it, but without doing any of the actual messy hard work that real intimacy requires. They wanted to be seen as these deeply committed people without any of the vulnerability or honesty or sacrifice that genuine community is built on.
His second analogy makes the point even clearer. It's the classic mistake of confusing the signpost for the actual destination. So let's say you're driving to see the Golden Gate Bridge. You see this sign on the highway. Now, it's a helpful sign, right? It tells you you're going the right way. But you would never pull over, get out of the car, and say, "We made it, this is it." Of course not. It's just a signpost.
You get a little closer, and you see another sign. Even better. But it's still not the destination. It's just pointing the way.
This is the destination. Marc's point is that the physical temple building, or for us today, even going to a church service or doing some religious activity, those things are only ever meant to be signposts. They're designed to point to the real destination, which is an authentic encounter with God's presence inside a real community. Ananias and Sapphira, they were busy polishing the signpost while completely ignoring the destination. So let's wrap all this up. If the temple has shifted from a place you go to a people you are a part of, what in the world does that mean for us right here, right now? And that leaves us with the final, really challenging question that Marc poses. If the community of people, our relationships, our interactions, our shared life, if that is the modern-day thin place where heaven meets earth, how are we treating this holy space? Are we honoring it as something sacred, or are we, in our own subtle ways, treating it like it's just something common?